Singapore faces a demographic problem, one which threatens to destabilize society. The total fertility rate has dropped to 1.16, far below the required replacement level of 2.1. This means that the elderly population will nearly quadruple by 2050, with effects as diverse as an increasing dependency ratio and low economic growth. However, there is one far more serious overlooked impact. What about the elderly themselves? 11.4% of elderly citizens are estimated to have depression. This has been shown to exert multiplicative effects on functional disability, exacerbating existing mental conditions like dementia and resulting in suicidal thoughts. Depression is also correlated with a higher likelihood of premature death. The most painful impact of this is the increase in elderly suicides, from 79 in 2000 to 126 in 2014. This represents the devastating impact of elderly depression on sufferers, who have to endure constant pain due to the failure of support networks to reach them. This is also symptomatic of growing societal dysfunction. The government has long promoted social cohesion through the framework of our shared values, like family as the basic unit of society. This is, however, being undermined by elderly depression, which widens the generational gap by reducing intergenerational interaction, leading to greater societal division and impeding government attempts to promote social unity. The greatest cause for worry is that while elderly depression exerts damaging consequences on its sufferers, it is barely visible to others. For instance, Madam Ong Ah Hyong was only diagnosed with depression after being treated for heart disease. She would have otherwise continued suffering alone. Addressing this problem with traditional top-down support networks is thus ineffective and unreliable, as there is difficulty in reaching every patient. This problem has arisen for two underlying reasons: the widening generational gap and the simultaneous normalization and stigmatization of depression. There is a growing disconnect between the elderly and working adults due to a change in lifestyles and values and the rush pace of life in Singapore. This leads to increased isolation, even when the elderly citizen normally lives with their family, given the long working week in Singapore of 45.6 hours, which leaves the elderly alone most of the time. This disconnect engenders a fear of dependence, that they will be a burden to their family, making it difficult for them to seek their help, instead keeping their condition hidden to themselves. Without the support of a tightly knit family, the elderly suffers from greater social isolation, and VWOs and neighbours are thus unable to help the invisible sufferer, worsening their condition and the invisibility of depression in general. This problem is exacerbated by the normalization of depression. Depression is typically not regarded as a problem in the elderly. In fact, it is taken for granted as a part of growing old. Because of this, there is both a lack of awareness and sensitivity to elderly depression. The total lack of mental health awareness in Singapore is troubling. Only half of those presented with a scenario of a severely depressed individual could identify the presence of depression. Most saw their problem as being too weak and believed the real problem was a lack of resilience and fortitude. Together with the fact that most see mental illnesses as a sign of abnormality, this results in discrimination against this group. 7 in 10 sufferers of mental illnesses reported they were unable to live with dignity as they were being stigmatized. This stigmatization leads the sufferer to be reluctant to seek treatment as they fear societal rejection. In fact, 6 in 10 with major depression have never sought help. This is because most are not privy to the fact that depression is not permanent and can in fact be cured with treatment. Treatment can reduce depressive symptoms, improve quality of life, and potentially prolong it. Antidepressants alone were found to have had beneficial impacts in at least 40% of users. If prevailing stigmatic attitudes can be altered, many can thus be saved. So, how do we solve this problem? A study found that among elderly citizens who indicated depression, 9 in 10 did not live alone. Thus, an important step in combating depression is to get adults and children to forge stronger familial bonds by increasing interaction and creating an inclusive environment where one can talk freely without fearing discrimination or stigmatization. This is the foremost solution to elderly depression, to strengthen family networks and enable quick identification of oncoming depressive symptoms for immediate treatment. Society as a whole must also step up to increase elderly interaction through means like volunteering and elderly socialization programs. These programs are important because they stave off boredom and, if conducted between generations, bridge the generational gap, enabling a symbiotic transfer of ideas and knowledge. More importantly, they enable elderly citizens to fulfill their social needs and keep them occupied. Besides volunteering as buddies, we should also create informal support networks that can keep watch on vulnerable elderly citizens who are potential patients of depression. This kind of bottom-up support will prove more comprehensive than traditional top-down approaches in combating this problem due to its low visibility and localized nature. The crux of this issue, however, is that it is overlooked. Most do not think that living alone can trigger depression. Most do not see the signs of depression as it sets in. Without an awareness campaign, most will not be willing or aware of the need to strengthen family networks, participate in elderly socialization programs, or create informal support groups. Raising awareness of the symptoms of depression, and more importantly, that it is curable, will thus be the biggest step forward in combating this problem by encouraging greater take-up of the other solutions. One can do so through various mediums, be it on a blog, radio, or simply by volunteering at a community centre to participate in outreach efforts. All this will help target elderly depression by helping to dispel stereotypes and encourage people to keep a greater lookout for elderly citizens exhibiting depressive symptoms, ensuring they are quickly treated to prevent escalation of their condition. If you're willing to regularly meet with an elderly citizen for a few months, why not give it a shot? Or you could write a blog post on the causes of depression and warning signs to look out for. You might just be saving a life in the process.